This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Jamie Schwartzman on the show. He is the Chief Creative Strategist and founder of Flux Branding, which is a premier branding agency with over 25 years of experience transforming businesses. He's also developed an idea method, which we're going to talk about today, which is kind of a 4-step process when it comes to branding. And we're going to talk about how that involves culture and leadership within a company. Anyway, with all that being said, Jamie, welcome to the show.
John, thanks for having me.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career, and why is it that you decided to start and found Flux Branding?
Well, it's an interesting story. I certainly didn't have this in mind. This wasn't the game plan, but the way it's worked out has been really pretty good. So I started my career as an artist. So I got a master's in fine arts from UCLA, and my first company was a manufacturing company. I was designing products. And what I found was that, the product design was important, but how people felt about it was even more important. And so developing really story and getting people involved and to stand behind the products really was what it was all about. And that led me into branding. Because branding, a lot of people think about it as graphic design or color, but branding is a much bigger undertaking about sort of engineering how people are going to feel about things.
Yeah, you know what? When you say all that, it kind of reminds me of the first leadership book that I ever read, which was Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And I remember probably 15 years ago, he gave a TED Talk where he talked about how, what makes a company successful is how the customer feels about the company.
Yeah, and it's not just not just the customer, right? It's team members too. So it's, brand is really about developing a feeling, not just only for customers, but also for team members, for our suppliers, for our partners, even competitors. Like we want everybody to feel something, get a predictable feeling and understanding when they think about any company.
Yeah. Yeah. And, how is it that you go about doing that? Let's say on a team level, like if you're a new manager and you want to develop a culture for your team and the products that you develop and products that you build, how do you go about discovering what that feeling should be?
Well, I would say that, for us, branding is pretty much a top-down exercise.
Mhm.
Typically, when we're engaging, we're starting at the CEO level or, at the highest level of management to develop really what are the core values and the principles and the promises that the organization as a whole is going to, stand behind. So I would say, if we're just dealing at the team level now, I would look at that particular team and really start to understand what are the values and what are the principles that we stand behind as a team. And it can certainly happen at the team level. It doesn't have to be at the full corporate level because, values and promises, these are not, they're defined however we decide to define them. Like we can make the decision of what are the principles that we're going to stand behind and then use that as a way to build culture. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense to you, John?
It does. Yeah. When you go into like figuring out what those principles are, what kind of questions are you asking?
Well, I would say it's all first about, how do we feel about things, right? And what are we willing to do and what aren't we willing to do? Because, we can't stand for everything and we don't want to be all things for all people. I would say the first thing that we try to do is find out, who is the customer, who are we working with? And try to get a sense of, what are they all about? And, what are their demands? That's one side of it. The other side of it is to look at us and what can we really do? And what can we do well? I think that brand, isn't about trying to figure out and being something that people want you to be. It's really about figuring out what is brilliant and what is special and unique about our team, and what can we bring to the table that really is a turn on for the people who have to deal with us.
Mm. So when you're going through this process, and it sounds like a very introspective process for the business and the individuals within the business. Um, when you do discover the things that are brilliant, special, and unique within a team or a company, how do you go about like documenting it or codifying that or putting something down to kind of explain that?
Well, it's interesting, and I'll tell a little story.
Mhm.
I had lunch with a woman, and her family was in the diamond business, and we had this really interesting conversation over lunch. What does it take to do diamonds, right?
Mhm.
And actually, it's very similar to what we do in branding. Like first in gemstones, you need somebody who is knowledgeable enough to find the raw material. So, this isn't something that's easy to do. You and I might be stumbling around looking at pebbles. I can't tell it's the world's largest diamond in the world. It takes somebody who really knows what they're looking for and can recognize the raw materials that are going to be a candidate to, use. Then once that thing is found, you have another specialist who's able to look at that raw material and figure out, how can I best position this? How can I make the cuts, right? To this role is called the marker. And the marker makes identifies where the cuts need to be made to have those facets to reveal the brilliance of the stone, right? And not
Mm.
cut away too much of it. Then it goes to a third person who is the cutter. And the cutter has to be able to, execute the marks that the marker has put down to cut it. So now you've got this brilliant stone. You've been able to reveal the brilliance of the stone. Now it still needs to go to a setter. And now it still needs to go into merchandising and into marketing. So there's a lot of different expertise and specialists that go on in here. And I think that's what's important to recognize. This is sometimes a hard thing to do by yourself. It's really best done with somebody who can assist you and be, objective from the outside.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think having someone else to show you a different perspective because we all have our own lenses that we look through life at. And, for me, one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had in my leadership journey, I guess, was when I got a mentor. I had a mentor that could kind of point out the things and the flaws that I have that I didn't see myself.
Yeah, it's like, drinking your own Kool-Aid. And that's what I say a lot when we're doing this kind of work. And that's really why when brand is happening, it really helps to have an outside, observer, somebody who can come in and give you the real view on it that's not colored from all of the internal perspectives.
Mm. You mean like people inside may see their product as being one thing, whereas from the outside, the company is seen as a different thing.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Mhm.
So the process that we go through, it's like a 4-step process. We call it the idea method. You talked a little bit about it, I think, at the opening of the show.
Mhm.
But, it really talks about it. The methodology is put in place to develop a solid level of understanding before any recommendations are proposed. The idea is IDEA, which
Mhm.
is which is ignite, distill, energize, activate. Those are the 4 steps of doing branding. And we've branded our methodology, but I would say that what we do is best practices in general for doing branding. So let me break it down for anybody who's listening and is interested in what brand is all about.
Okay.
It starts with Ignite, and Ignite really is the discovery session. It's fact finding. You might think of it in terms of market research, but I would say it's more intimate than that. We do workshops, we do in-depth interviews with stakeholders, with employees, with customers, suppliers, the sales team, whoever we can talk to get a sense of, who do we think we are on the inside and who do people see us as on the outside, and try to figure out sort of, is there a gap between what we're seeing and what they're seeing? That's the critical part of Ignite. That results in some sort of a report, usually when we write up what we call an insights report. And it's really about, at this point, creating consensus. So everybody's on the same page and we all agree that we're operating within the same set of principles. When that's done, we move into distill. And distill is brand positioning. And that's really, it's writing. man, this is where we do poetic writing. We write the Bible of, who are we? What are we? And this is a big deal. Like if you were going to figure out who you were, John, and it might take years of therapy and really some deep soul searching and figuring out who you are. So, I look at identity in this kind of terms as something much more than just graphic design. This is a core, deep, spiritual kind of process of figuring out who we are. And when it's done right, it's very powerful. And I would say the collaboration of doing it with the team generates a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of a loyalty, and a lot of enthusiasm. Once we have the thing sort of figured out, what are our principles, E-energize. And E-energize is where we get into visuals because, visuals just matter. We don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of things that we're dealing with. Picture paints 1,000 words and it goes fast. But how do we make those pictures meaningful and reflect the strategies that we've done in Distill? And then in Activate, that's where we do stuff with it. So, in terms of team, a lot of times we're doing things like fleet design. We're doing apparel. It might sound like, oh, swag, is not a big deal. It's a big deal when we put on that shirt, right? And that shirt's got the logo on it. How do I feel? How do I feel when I pull my business card out of my wallet? Those are the kinds of things that branding's all about. And in Activate, we do a lot of different stuff. What we don't do in brand is we don't really do marketing, right? Marketing is a whole separate discipline. Those guys are doing leads gen. We're the idea people. We're the creative. We want to generate feeling and make something meaningful.
So what is that relationship like then with marketing or with sales or with even technology, like the different departments? How is it that the brand, kind of is used or by or maybe envelops those other areas?
Well, I mean, first I would say that technology is just omnipresent. And, I've been doing this, for a while. I was, in graduate school when the Mac was coming out, and I'm sort of first generation of using digital technology within this practice. And I would just say that technology it's the basis for communications now, and it influences so much of how we interact with any kind of brand. So I would say that, the way technology operates, the user experience of technologies, from everything from internal ERP systems to external web or e-commerce systems, the way that these things look and feel really matters. It can make a huge difference, right? Because it needs to work. It needs to be bug free, right? But it also really needs to make people feel good. It needs to be intuitive, easy. So I think that's a big part of it. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out like how we in technology as leaders can utilize our brand and whether it be like going back to the feeling and how we feel about the company and how we we wrote down who we are, we decided who we were. How can we take that and use that to energize our teams and and inspire our group and core group to be better, technologists?
Well, one of the things I would suggest is thinking about this in terms of archetypes, right? Archetypes are characters in stories that are known and understood. Interesting about archetypes are really kind of primarily developed by Carl Jung. Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud were contemporaries. And Freud, and I'm going to give you sort of a high level, super high level summary of how this all worked, right? So Freud, he was talking about the subconscious mind, what we're dreaming about, what's happening in the subconscious. Jung talked about the collective conscious, that there was stuff that we understand just because of the stories we were raised on and culturally what we've been exposed to. And coming out of that are these 12 characters, like the hero, the explorer, the sage, the caregiver, right? These are different types of archetypes. And I think understanding what your archetype is has a real important basis for giving the flavor of how things should work and how you should appear. We're doing a brand right now for a big hair care company. They have big technology. They do a tremendous major e-commerce amount of volume. And for them, we pick the ruler. And the ruler is, the attitude of the ruler is that the world is a dangerous place and we need to create rules to keep you safe. That's what the ruler does, right? Creates the law, creates systems. And when you know that that's where we're coming from, then the way that we speak and the way that we act and the way we interact is easier to understand. It's easier to define, right?
Right.
Because we are trying to tell people, yeah, we have the way. We have the product. We've been doing this for 100 years. Trust us, follow us. That's a little different than maybe another brand, which would maybe be more like a lover brand, which is about trying to create intimacy and great feeling and trying to feel good about something. So we use archetypes all the time in branding, and they're super handy.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And, I think we should use that in technology about who our clients are, who our customers are, who we are. And, I use them when it comes to this podcast, even like, of who my audience is and how to understand how best to communicate with them to help hopefully make people better at their jobs and better at their lives and, have a happier, healthier, existence.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, it really is.
And we're just coming up with a simple set of principles that everybody can agree on and get behind. And a lot of the times when we do brand, it's not just about writing the report and delivering the stuff. We do engagement workshops for the hair care company I was telling you about right now. They're a big German-owned company. We're doing 4 deep, immersive sessions with their people, because the brand isn't about what we put into a book. It's about how do they feel and how do they operate. So I'm doing a full day offsite retreat with the whole sales team, so they understand what the brand is all about. I'm doing a full day offsite with the integrated marketing team, so they understand what it's all about. Technology is part of that too, but you can understand how all of these different groups have their own ways of thinking, and it really needs to be communicated. And I also think it needs to be repeated. It's about drilling. And I don't mean drilling like, drill, baby, drill, but I do mean it in terms of drilling as in repeating it. Because I just found that things can tend to erode over time. And so doing sort of recharge sessions and reminding ourselves what we're all about is an important part of the process. And I've found that leaders that do this tend to really engage well. They engage their teams. And I think we talked a little bit about spirituality. I think spirituality is part of what we're doing here, creating corporate spirit, creating spirited teams, highly spirited teams that are engaged, that love what they do, that don't dread Monday morning, right? It's more like they're like, wow, it's Friday already? That week went too fast. And that is part of having a highly spirited team, not in a religious sense, but in like an engagement sense, in an enthusiasm sense. And I think this is such an important dynamic of getting people to work together and to love what they do and feel good about themselves.
Yeah, I think, building that engagement is super important when it comes to leadership. I remember hearing somebody giving a TED talk one time where they said something about how like the only thing worse than, an angry, bad boss is a disengaged, ignoring boss. And, having that leader that is engaged with this team and building that excitement and that spirit around what they're doing and giving purpose to the tasks that they're doing to get everybody involved and excited is extremely valuable. And one of those things that I think is under talked about maybe when it comes to what is a good leader.
Well, I mean, I think it's leading by example. And there's some really interesting stuff. There's a great book, Leaders Eat Last.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
is the idea that, really they come first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people feel good about themselves, the team works better. This isn't about compliance. It's not about rules. It's about leadership, right? And leaders, the way I see it, sort of like leaders and followers are counterparts of each other. Like a leader can't be a leader if you don't have followers. And followers really want a leader that's going to be, have their best interest at heart. So I think the whole thing is it needs to be very generous in spirit. And that is a big part of understanding leadership that I see. I'm working with a CEO now. He's leading about a $350 million company in insurance services. Equity brought him in to do a turnaround. And he is just the most amazing and most inspiring guy. He's got a set of philosophies, and he takes his team on these offsites. I went to one of the offsites. It was in Park City, Utah, and it was the coolest, best place. And it was a 3-day offsite, just talking about team and team dynamics. Sure, there was budgeting built into it, right? And what our objectives were for the year and how bonus plans would work. But I would say that the way it was all coded was in terms of learning about ourselves and becoming better leaders. So this is the secret, man. This is the secret sauce to effective organizations that can grow exponentially.
Yeah. I remember in that book, Simon Sinek wrote it, and in there he talked about having that circle of safety where, inside there you kind of had each other's back, you could share with one another, and, that's kind of where you learned who you are.
Yeah. That's an important part of team, right? And I think it's easy sometimes to look at just the mission and just get to trying to accomplish the mission, specifically in technology. And technology is challenging, right? There's a lot of different moving pieces. It's evolving so quickly right now. The tools that we were using 5 years ago, I wouldn't choose them anymore, right? I'm building a digital platform right now. We made our choices on platforms, like I say, about 5 years ago. Boy, were we wrong. And now we're doing a full code refactor. But it's not just about doing the work. It's got to be also about getting people to feel good about the work. Mm-hmm. Because when people feel good about the work, the product comes out better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that defined purpose that people buy into and believe in makes a big difference. Otherwise, you get into this pattern of just like, I have a task, I'm checking off the task. I'm not actually, I don't have that vision and that purpose driving me. And I think that's super important.
Yeah. I think it's a big part of loyalty too. Mm-hmm. It's a big part of retention. We're in such a crazy time of change right now. And, my agency, we're called Flux. And Flux is all about change, right? We thrive in times of change. And this is a really interesting time just globally, right? We're seeing tremendous amounts of change. It's the pendulum is swinging left to right every day right now. Mm-hmm. And so, creating some safe harbor within our teams, really important. I'm watching my portfolio grow and get demolished on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's intense.
Yeah. You'll have a couple bad days and then one great day and then a couple bad days.
Yeah. So, part of it also is this idea of sort of keeping an eye on the top of the mountain. Mm-hmm. Right. I think about that a lot. Yeah. We talked a little bit about archetypes. Our archetype at Flux is we're the explorer. And the explorer isn't just about exploring. The explorer is about finding passage and finding a way through. And so big ideas like, I keep my eyes on the top of the mountain. That's where we're going. This journey takes us to the top of the mountain. And along the way, I don't know what I'm going to expect. I mean, a tree might have fallen. I may have to go around it. Maybe there's, a change in the river, and it's where I usually cross, I can't cross. So it's not possible for me to predict every single tactic that's going to take me to the top of the mountain. I mean, I might get a rock in my shoe. And I could certainly sit around there and go like, yeah, I'd be mad about the rock in my shoe. Or I could sit down, take it out, and move to the top of the mountain. Mm-hmm. So I think, eyes on the prize is the key. It's the key metaphor here of not being so worried about all of the little challenges along the way. Be focused on achieving the goal, getting to the top, and those little annoying setbacks those can be opportunities for accomplishments.
Yeah. So that you're saying basically take that setback and turn it into like a setup for something to overcome or achieve.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We have one of these core values at Flux, which is lead the way.
Mm.
And so lead the way is one of our core values because the client doesn't know where they need to, they don't know. They don't know the way through. And we're taking them on a journey. So imagine I'm taking you on a journey, John. We're going, to the top of the mountain, and there's a place where we're going to cross the river. And it rained a lot, and now the river is much bigger than usual. And we got to cross this river, right? Which means we've got to jump in the cold water and wade across the cold water to get to the other side with our packs above our heads, right? And you could say, Jamie, I don't like cold water. I don't want to go on the water. I can say, well, I'll tell you what, John, there is another way. We could go down. It's a 2-hour drive, 2-hour walk out of our way where there's a bridge, and we could cross that bridge and come back. So now we've just gone 2 hours out of our way to accommodate your fear of the cold, right? Along the way, we got bit by mosquitoes, and now it's another 2 hours back. We didn't have to go in the cold, but it was kind of a pain. If I can encourage you to jump in that cold water with me, and we're just like, oh my God, we got to the other side. And there's this tremendous sense of accomplishments on the other side. I didn't think I could do it, but I did it. Right. And we dry off and we go on our way. There's something more that happens. We didn't only avoid a 4-hour detour. Something else happened where we had a sense of accomplishment, and there's energy that's generated along the way. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes total sense. Yeah. And I love that. I love the fact that you guys actually define that as your core value of leading the way and understanding that you have to sometimes help lead your clients there as well.
Yeah, it's difficult because we go into the unknown. And I would say leadership is a lot of times is going into the unknown, right?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of leaders don't talk about enough is the fact that we don't know where we're going most of the time. We're a lot of times trying to figure it out and realizing like, okay, as a leader, I feel like I'm expected to know every answer to every question, but in reality, I don't. And I'm going to rely on my team and help lead my team to figure out all the answers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of, saying my prototype beats your business plan.
Mm.
And, we can try to figure it out and try to get all the tactics together and then, implement this major program, but we're never going to know everything.
Right.
Right. We're going to have to make adjustments along the way. So I kind of like the idea of, small steps consistently taken can yield a great journey. Because if I take a small step in the wrong direction, it's not too big of a step for me to come back and pivot.
Yeah. Can you say it again? Small steps consistently taken?
Small steps consistently taken can yield a great journey.
Mm. Yeah, I love that saying. I think that's really important because a lot of people want to take those big leaps. But if you leap the wrong way, you can find yourself in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you got to, though, right?
Yeah, it
just requires that leap of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the more that we can get into these small little micro leaps, it's a little safer.
Yeah, it's safer and it gives you, and it builds that habit, that consistent habit of moving forward and not stopping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's great. Jamie, I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you so much for coming on the show and just talking to us about what really is branding and how it's related to and energizes and actually activates our leadership as well. If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about how they can connect with you online, learn more about what you're doing at Flux Branding, and maybe work with you later.
Yeah, totally. So there's some really cool free tools on our website at fluxbranding.com. We have this cool brand personality decoder, and it's a version of an archetypes tool. There's 6 little sliders where you sort of identify where am I on the polarity of these 6 different metrics, and then it will calculate a result. And it's not going to give you 12, but there are 4. You'll either be a protector, a dreamer, an explorer, or a lover, and we'll give you the results right there on the website immediately. You don't even have to put on your email address. If you do want a report, we also kick out a free report, put in your email address, and we'll send it over.
Awesome.
And then for larger companies that are, have teams and are really trying to do something more major, I do a project called the Brand Blueprint. Brand Blueprint is a guided session with me. It's 30 minutes. I facilitate a discussion. And based on that, I can generate a really cool report. It sort of documents what the state of the brand is. It gives you a quick gap analysis, some sense of where things are at. If you're ready or you have something going on, like, if you're dealing with a competitive attack, if you're dealing with mergers and acquisitions where the team isn't kind of working together, if you've got new products or services that you're about launching, contact me, and you could just send me an email. You can get to me through my website or send me an email direct, jamie@fluxbranding.com, JAMIE, and send me a note, and I'd be happy to do a brand blueprint with you.
Awesome. And I'll link that too in the show notes at geekleader.com so people can go there and click through to the website and shoot you a message. Jamie, again, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate having you on.
It was a really fun conversation. Thanks for doing it.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to. Click on their links and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.